Welcome to the Neuropulse podcast. Today, we are discussing one of the most powerful and misunderstood molecules in the human brain, dopamine. Most people think of dopamine as the molecule of pleasure. They think it's what you feel when you eat a piece of chocolate or win a bet. But in reality, dopamine is the molecule of motivation, craving, and pursuit. It is the fuel that drives you to move toward your goals. However, we are currently living in a world designed to hijack this system. Every notification, every infinite scroll on social media, and every hit of processed sugar is draining your dopamine reservoir. The result? You feel unmotivated, you can't focus on deep work, and you feel chronically bored even when you have everything at your fingertips. In this deep dive, we are going to explore the neurobiology of the dopamine baseline. I will explain why your current habits are making you chemically lazy, and more importantly, I will provide you with a step-by-step protocol to reset your brain. We are going to reclaim your focus by understanding the relationship between pain, pleasure, and the neural circuits of the prefrontal cortex. By the end of this video, you will have a complete toolkit to leverage your neurobiology rather than being a slave to it. Let's dive into the science of the dopamine reset, the biological mechanism, the why. To understand how to fix your focus, we first have to understand the dopamine wave. Imagine your brain has a baseline level of dopamine. When you experience something rewarding, let's say you check a viral post on Instagram, your dopamine levels spike. This feels great, but there is a universal law of biology. What goes up must come down. In fact, after a spike, your dopamine doesn't just return to the baseline. It drops below the baseline. This is the pain-pleasure balance described by my colleague, Dr. Anna Lemke. This low state is what causes the craving. You feel a slight agitation, so you scroll more, trying to get back to that high. If you do this all day, you eventually deplete your readily releasable pool of dopamine. This is why after 4 hours on your phone, you feel exhausted and can't even focus on a simple book. Your brain is literally in a deficit. Foundational protocols, light and cold. Now, if we want to raise our dopamine baseline without the crash that comes from drugs or social media, we have to look at biological levers. The first, and perhaps most important, is sunlight. Every morning, within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, you must get sunlight into your eyes. This isn't just about feeling good. It's about triggering the timed release of cortisol and setting a timer for melatonin. But more importantly, viewing morning sunlight increases the expression of dopamine receptors. If you skip this, your brain is essentially trying to run a race with a flat tire. For those of you in the UK or northern US where it's cloudy, you need a high-intensity 10,000 lux light box, but natural light is always king. Next, let's talk about a tool that is often feared but scientifically undisputed: deliberate cold exposure. Whether it's a cold shower or a plunge, the data shows that immersion in cold water around 50 F or 10 C causes a massive and sustained increase in dopamine. We aren't talking about a quick spike like a shot of espresso. We are talking about a 250% increase that lasts for several hours. This is comparable to the increase seen with nicotine or even cocaine, but without the chemical crash or the destructive addiction. It's a natural way to reset your system and build top-down mental control. The deep work strategy, prefrontal cortex. The reason you can't focus is that your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning and willpower, has been weakened. It's like a muscle that is atrophied. When you sit down to work and immediately feel the urge to check your phone, that is your brain seeking a cheap dopamine hit. To fix this, you need to practice boredom. Yes, you heard that correctly. You must train your brain to tolerate the absence of stimulation. This is where the 90-minute deep work blocks come in. During these 90 minutes, your phone is in another room. No music with lyrics, just your brain and the task. In the beginning, it will feel like physical pain. Your brain will scream for a distraction, but this pain is actually the sensation of your dopamine pathways recalibrating. If you can push through that initial 20-minute friction, you enter the flow state where dopamine and norepinephrine work together to create effortless focus. The chemical toolkit, nutrition supplements. While behavioral tools like sunlight and cold exposure are the foundation, we can further optimize the dopamine system through specific nutritional and supplemental interventions. Remember, dopamine is synthesized from an amino acid called tyrosine. If you are deficient in the building blocks, no amount of willpower will fix your focus. 1. The role of L-Tyrosine to increase the readily releasable pool of dopamine. Many high performers utilize L-Tyrosine. When ingested, usually in doses of 500 mg to 2000 mg, it provides the precursor needed for dopamine synthesis. This is particularly useful before a high-intensity cognitive task. However, a word of caution: if you use this daily, you risk a crash. It is a tool for the deep work days, not a daily crutch. 2. Mucunapurines. In more extreme cases of dopamine depletion, some look toward mucunapurines, which contains L-Dopa. This is much more potent. It directly enters the brain and converts to dopamine. But as a neurobiologist, I advise caution here. Frequent use can down-regulate your natural receptors, making you even less motivated in the long run. 3. The caffeine protocol. Caffeine is perhaps the most used drug in the world, but most people use it wrong. Caffeine doesn't just wake you up. It increases the density of your dopamine receptors. It makes your brain more sensitive to dopamine already circulating in your system. The Huberman protocol for caffeine: delay your intake by 90 to 120 minutes after waking. This prevents the afternoon crash and allows your natural adenosine clearing process to complete. 4. Foundation micronutrients. We cannot ignore magnesium, specifically threonate or bisglycinate, and omega-3 fatty acids. High doses of EPA above 1,000 mg per day have been shown in clinical trials to be as effective as some low-dose antidepressants in improving mood and focus. Why? Because they reduce neuroinflammation, allowing dopamine to signal more efficiently across the synapse.